Okay. Good morning, gentlemen. And I see that Rhonda is listening, so that's nice to have her around. We are here. Dick Rout is excused. He had to go to the mainland, so we don't have him today, but the five of us should be here. Paul may be just late. Have you had a chance to look at the minutes?
I have. I move approval.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you. Passed. All right. That was gentle. So did you have a chance to look over Dick's notes that he sent around
Yes.
regarding
I have.
He deserves a lot of credit for having done that.
he really
Good job.
does. He's
Yeah.
put a lot of good stuff together.
And we have Randy's memo also, of course.
Of course.
And much of that's what he put in there is from the memo, which is good. You know, we're not going contrary to it.
Right. And of course, the most qualifications exist in the assessor's realm.
Wow, I didn't know
So,
that.
Yeah, that's pretty standard, I think. Is there anything on the sheriff's section that you guys need to talk about? And he's adding to 2 years of full-time law enforcement officer. I think that's a fair addition.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that's part of what we said weeks ago, that the qualifications have to be verifiable by somebody at the counter at the elections office. We don't want to have a committee to actually evaluate these things. And these seem to me that are pretty straightforward.
Yes.
You show up and you sign up for election, and demonstrate your abilities by displaying these certificates and these hours and all of that. That's actually good well done by Dick, I thought.
Yeah, I think so too.
Maureen?
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yes, David.
So I'm in terms of the formatting here, he has first, for example, under sheriff, he has a bunch of wording from RCW 36, blah, 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 blah. And that exists. And then he's adding on under the proposal, 2 years of experience as a full-time law enforcement officer. So, there are qualifications that exist. I understood from before that in many cases, such as the auditor, there weren't any existing qualifications, but obviously he's clarified and put down for us to see that there are, and is proposing some additions to it with regard to certain positions. But what I don't understand, at the very beginning, all elected and appointed department heads currently required to take training in public records, et cetera, et cetera. Where is that? Is that in a county ordinance, or what is that exactly? He's not here, unfortunately.
Where are you again? Sorry, where are you, David?
Top of the page.
This is the document that was attached to Maureen's email.
So what I was told, David, by Mike Thomas, was that in the last 2 years they've put into practice that everyone has to take the same training that we took. Remember that PowerPoint that went through records and ethics, etc., and Robert's rules, that everybody is now required to take that. And that's a recent thing. I don't know that it's an ordinance at all. I don't think it's a law. I think it's just a practice that they've instituted.
Well, in all due respect to Dick, this is not a qualification. That's not something that they do beforehand. You can't require them to do this ahead of time. It's after they're elected they take this. So that to me, should be just struck.
I don't think that's true. I think they may be required to take that training, as we did online, before they begin as a volunteer department head or elected.
Look at that. Why would somebody who's running for office go through training ahead of time. It's not clear to me. I think this is something that they have to go through after they take office. It's kind of during the break-in period. That's my understanding of it.
Well, council has to go to the WASAC training in Olympia. They have to go through like a 5-day course of local government information.
When do they have to do that?
I think it's within the first 6 months of employment, or maybe it's
again-
before. Maybe it's if they're elected in November, I think sometimes they've gone in December.
Then it's not. a
Having not taken
qualification.
office until January.
Then it's not a
Anyway, I think we had a
qualification.
question from Tony.
I tend to agree with David on this one. I think that this first paragraph, all of it, is probably not necessary because if officials are elected in November and they are, say, required to do those kind of trainings in December, that's fine. But how shall I say, it's impractical for us to ask elected or candidates to take this training before the election, especially in a busy election season. And I would not support this kind of a paragraph to be included. Management training, I'm not sure. I mean, that's, if somebody is running for office, we're hoping that they have some kind of management experience. Anyway, I agree with David.
Okay, what about you, Bob?
Not sure we should leave it off, but I do agree that it is not a qualification. It's more of a requirement. And I think it is important to note what the requirements of the office are. Maybe we should call this qualifications and requirements of the office. Then we could leave it in because I think it's important for the public and for people who are running for office to know that they've got to do this. For instance, if you've got to complete something within the first 6 months, what happens at 6 months if you haven't completed it?
There is no,
I mean,
yeah, there is no,
Theoretically, you would have to leave office, theoretically, because it's a requirement of the office. So, that's something to think about also, by the way. I think calling it qualifications and requirements is a good idea because David is certainly right. It's not a qualification, or it's not a qualification unless it's something that you must possess before you are elected, I
Mm.
think.
Right.
Mhm. David, did you have something else to say?
Well, I can see that doing two different things, but I would not put them in one document. I would say required qualifications to run for office, and then the other one would be separate, would be required training or something like that. But let's not mix them together like this appears to do.
Well, I would really like to hear Dick's reasoning for this, and I
Sure.
think that would be important for us to, go through this, but then continue the conversation at our next meeting so that he can weigh in. I think he has a good way of expressing what he means to say. So let's give him a shot. Yeah, Bob.
I had another question, and that is these various things that we agree are qualifications, like 2 years experience at X. That's a qualification. You've got to have it probably before they accept your whatever it is you turn in when you say that you're going to run. They would look at whether or not you're qualified. Well, does the clerk or some person, how do they check on that? Do they pick the phone up and call where it says on your resume? Do you have to turn in a resume saying how you met these various qualifications? And then the clerk or someone has to check on that.
Well, I think it's different for the county council than other elected departments. I am not sure what the requirements are in all the elected departments. I know the auditor has to go to certain meetings with the state. What is it, Tony? Yeah.
I think to answer Bob's question, for example, the prosecuting attorney, they're required to have passed the bar exam. So if they come into the counter to sign up to run for office, they have to show that they have the bar exam passed. So that would be a simple thing to test. I'm not sure about everything else, how they do it.
Right, right.
Because how would you check if somebody has been an auditor in the past? If they say, let's say they come from a different county and now they're living here.
I would think that they would have to turn in a resume, a short list, or whatever it is that has on it how they did and when they did the thing that they were required to have done. And then it would say, I was an auditor in King County, you know, from this year to that year. Then all you got to do is pick up the phone and call the auditor in King County and say, was this person the prior auditor from this year to that year? But what would probably happen, and what happens in most cases like this, is nobody checks anything, you know, and that I mean, that's my experience with bureaucracies in the government, and you know.
Yeah.
So do we want to say something about that? Do we want to say and all of these requirements will be documented by, all these qualifications will be documented by the person seeking the office, and will be checked for accuracy by someone in the clerk's office or whoever's receiving that? That's a simple one-liner, and it requires somebody to do something.
David?
Yeah, in effect, what you're doing here is requiring somebody to certify that they have met these minimum requirements. And, you know, when somebody applies for a job frequently, well, not frequently, almost all, they fill out some kind of application or submit some documents. So maybe for each one of these, whatever we come up with, you have an application form. You just, you apply and say, I'm running for such and such an office, and I meet the following requirements. And then they so state, I was a deputy clerk for such and such from year X to Y, and leave it at that. But yeah, in terms of who's going to vet these things, in effect, somebody has to vet these applications if we put them in there. As Bob said, nobody's ever done it in the past. And I know I asked Mylene one time about whether or not the elections department had ever vetted candidates, and she said, no, never. So they're not set up to do this. And I'm not sure if it should be a low level, excuse the term, lower level official or clerk in the office, assistant clerk, whatever, who does it. It's a very important thing. And it may be that maybe the county council is the one who should vet these candidates. Because don't forget, people exaggerate all the time in applications and in resumes. And you want to be damn sure that these people are qualified.
Well, yeah, hold on.
Go ahead.
Go ahead there, Tony.
Yeah, I understand, but you cannot exaggerate if you're a clerk or not in a different county or a.
Oh, you can, but you're going to get caught.
You might exaggerate how experienced you are, but very unlikely you can exaggerate, if you were a clerk or a deputy sheriff someplace else. Or
well, there are other things that are more vague than that.
Yeah, in other words,
3 years experience in a law firm. What does that mean? So you could be a receptionist in a law firm.
But here's another caveat. Remember that an appointed person has to go through the personnel rules, and they are bound by the personnel
Right.
manual. The elected does not, and that is not an enforceable thing. So they are not required to fulfill references and all those things that come with it, because they're voted in by the people.
Well, then do we even have the authority to do this? Maybe we can't even do this. That would be a question for Randy, for elected
Yeah.
official. Maybe we can't even do anything.
But what is it, Bob?
our assessor is elected. The assessor has a long list of requirements that come out of the state statutes.
Right.
So we have the state statute saying an assessor has to have this experience and qualifications. And so that means that before we accept that person's, what is it called? Application to run for the office. Before we accept that, we have to
Candidacy.
check these requirements. Otherwise, they're empty. They mean nothing.
I know.
You know? So
But
it's
I think we would have to have this run by a legal, because it is a very obscure area. I mean, we should know that. We should indeed have some verification. What is it, David?
Well, I agree. I think we should ask Randy if we can even do this under state law. One other thing, I looked at King County a month or two ago when we first brought up this topic, and I looked at what they have. When they have a handbook for applicants for public office or something like that, and I looked in there, and there was only one area that said the the applicant must, or the candidate for public election to public office must meet the qualifications established in law. And that was it. This is what they gave to candidates. So candidates knew what they had, the process they had to go through to be a candidate. And that's all it said. And I couldn't figure out, well, okay, what are those qualifications? I guess in the terms of like the sheriff, there is an RCW, and yeah, that
Yeah.
Dick put it down there. But the other ones, maybe there isn't anything by state law, and maybe there's a good reason why. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason why. And so I would suggest we check with Randy. Maybe it can only be implemented at the state level, and we can't do that at the county. King County didn't do it.
Mhm.
At least that's my interpretation of what I saw.
Well, he's put together department heads and electeds, and department heads, of course, would be required. We would get that. And often they serve within the department and work their way up, and that's how they get appointed. But yeah, I think we're gonna have to take it up with legal. Yes, Bob.
One brief thing. Common sense tells you that when the state legislature sat down and wrote up all of these requirements for the assessor who's going to work in a county, and you can't be the assessor unless you meet these requirements. Common sense tells you that they expected us to make sure that these things were characteristics of the person who's running. Us, not some fairyland committee somewhere, but the county. And so I think it makes sense to put in the charter a couple of lines that says that the person who is running for the office or is a candidate to be appointed has a responsibility to set out in writing where he attained those qualifications, where he met those requirements. Then the clerk or whoever receives that has a responsibility to pick up the telephone and find out if that's accurate. Simple. My opinion.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I think the assessor qualifications are much simpler than is displayed here. If you look at the 5th item on the list, it basically says that the examination requirements of section blah blah, and this shall not apply to any person who shall have either, and there are 2 items on either, which is on the 2nd page. A, being certified as a real property appraiser by the Department of Personnel prior to whatever date, or the 2nd item. So we can probably say in one sentence, the qualification for assessor is somebody who has been certified as a real property appraiser by the Department of whatever, and call that good. And all the other items A through D and 2 to 4 are just too much information, I think. So basically, if we say you have to have passed an appraiser course or appraiser.
But that wouldn't be accurate then, Tony. You have to do one of those 2 things if you don't otherwise meet the requirements. There are lots of people probably who might want to become the assessor who were not certified as an appraiser before 1992, which is 29 years ago.
I agree with that. I'm not talking about the dates. I'm just saying that the verbiage of that item A would be enough to say you have to have had passed or a real property appraiser course by somebody. And I don't know what the verbiage is going to be on that, but basically say you have to have passed an appraiser course. That should be.
Well,
enough.
that qualification is in the RCW. It's in the very first line.
Maureen?
Yes, David, I'm sorry.
If I heard Tony properly, he wanted to reduce it just to what number was that, Tony, on this list here? Is that what you wanted to do?
It's actually 5A, but what Maureen said is actually correct. It's the first line.
But you wanted to truncate this thing substantially, as I understand. You wanted to simplify it.
We do not have the authority to do anything.
Well, that was going to be my point. This is set out by the state. And there is a very important reason why the state has all these requirements. And that is because we're dealing with money. We're dealing with state money. We're dealing with county money. We're dealing with taxation. And they have a vested interest, and the citizens, I think, have a vested interest in that this be done in the proper manner. This is a very, very significant thing. And if you look at number 2, this gives you an idea of how serious the state views these particular qualifications. It says the Department of Revenue shall prepare and administer an examination. We can't eliminate that. No person shall assess real property for purposes of taxation without having passed said examination or
David.
having received. We
David.
can't fool her with that.
I know, I'm not, with all due respect, I'm not suggesting preempting what the RCW says. I'm just saying for our own requirement in the county of San Juan, the RCWs have to be in place. There's nothing we can do about that. And I agree
Right.
that those are not going to be preempted. What I'm just saying, in our document, as a qualification to be an assessor, we can say, follow the RCW and,
Right.
or whatever, you know, and do the has been certified as a real property appraiser. So, I mean, we're making it way too complicated. The RCW is not going to change.
Okay, well, I would agree then, but, and I don't know if we can say or either, because I don't know if we have the authority to change it by putting an or.
Item 5 says or, David. Item 5 says or.
Okay, then we just leave it the way it is.
You know, Tony has a point, because if we set out in the charter these requirements, then the legislature says, you know, let's change this one to 3 years instead of 2 years or whatever. Then all of a sudden we're out of whack. But if we say must follow all of the things in the RCW, then all we have to do is when the person walks into the office to file for that office, we hand them a list of the present RCWs, and we say, okay, while you're standing here, you have to fill out. Maybe we make a little form, you know, how they met this one, this one, this one, this one. You know, they got to fill it out so we can check on it. And then when something changes a year from now, boom, the form changes. But we don't have it in the charter. All we have in the charter is just what Tony said, is they have to follow all these requirements plus. That makes sense.
I
As he
wish,
always does.
I wish Paul were here, because he was the assessor. He could help,
Yeah.
you know, sort through this and see what he thinks. So I suspect that, I like that you're pulling this in and reading this, but I think we're gonna have to wait for both Dick and Paul to kind of
Yeah,
chew on it
yeah.
some more. You?
Yeah.
And I don't know what our parameters are.
Oh, can you, hold on.
We got a lot of noise here.
Hi, Colin.
Could you check with Randy, maybe through Kevin or whatever you need to do, but find out what our flexibility is or isn't in this regard.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we have to do. Because clearly the assessor is a separate thing. This is a very well-developed requirements here, very well developed. The rest are not. And he has added some interesting possibilities. He's offering some proposals that I think we could look at. But I guess I should just get something to Randy and say, we need some parameters around this. Okay. Do you want to go through the treasurer, auditor, and court clerk? Or you want to leave that until we hear how much wiggle room we have on this? Go ahead, Bob. I think you're on mute.
I'd like to say that, remind everybody that the auditor, in fact, does not have any requirements. And that what he
Right.
put down here are his proposed requirements.
Right, exactly.
qualifications For the auditor. And I think it's important that something ought to be adopted, either this proposal or something else, and we just don't leave it like that anybody, any circus performer can become the auditor.
Maybe fine.
Yes, go ahead, Tony. I like that notion, circus performers. Do you have something, Tony?
I think the proposal by Dick on the auditor is very easily verifiable. Again, I use the front counter of the elections office. They can easily check if this person has been a deputy or a chief deputy of some kind of a control auditor's office. So I think those are easily verifiable. I can, if we were to go that route, I would be supportive of that route.
You know, it should be put down, though, that, and I think this is what you were saying, that it is their duty to do so.
I think David,
Also, I
has-
would add in, I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
I propose that we move on because we already discussed the need to talk to Randy about whether we can even do this. So
Well-
I think, why should we discuss it now? I mean, if you want to, fine. If there's nothing else that we need to get through on this agenda, then we can keep talking about it, but
One of the
we may
things,
find out we're wasting our time talking about it.
well, one of the things I could see being included in the auditor is also a payroll. That's a big part of her department, executing payroll for districts as well as the county. So, there are a couple of tweaks I would add in here, but, he put a lot of energy into it. I want to honor that he did that. And we needed to kick it around. And I think we have to now get some opinions on how to do it. And we desperately need Paul and Dick here. So we can move on. Because I don't think we're going to need the full hour here.
Yeah, I think
Um,
my suggestion, Madam Chair, is that we can say that we have, as a group here, as our five of us, that we have, or four of us, we have consensus that Dick did a very thorough job, and we can evaluate it when he and Paul are in the room. Evaluate it further, I should say.
By the way, it wasn't just the auditor, it's the treasurer, the auditor, and the county clerk, who apparently had no qualifications or whatever, and he made proposals in each one of the cases. I believe that's correct.
Okay. And Paul, okay, are present. All righty, we'll do that. I think that's a good suggestion. Thank you. I sent around, I'm going to move on to the next one. I sent around kind of a summary list instead of the long one with all of the comments in it. And it's the kind of thing we're going to need if and when we present to the full commission. Did you guys have a chance to look at it? It's the 412 summary.
Right.
Oh, mine says 4-6. I'm looking at the wrong one, I guess.
Yeah, there's another one that's a short one. It's just a 2-pager.
Uh-oh, okay.
411, oh, the cover,
412 summary.
yeah, the attachment says 412, but the subject line says 411, so I got it.
Okay. Okay, it's got 1 to 7. The last one being the minimum requirements, which we just went through. I added in on number 1, the findings, all the things that we discussed to back up our number 1 motion. And the others are all self-explanatory. Is everybody okay with this? Because when we present, I want you to know that Kevin feels that he might have enough votes to bring the elected votes back to the floor. So he mentioned that to me. Uh-oh. Oh, great. Thank you. Who did that? Tony?
Yeah, I did.
You're wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay. So that's an important thing. I'm not surprised, but we should be prepared for that. So when we do get to present, which could be this week, everybody needs to participate. Okay, we all need to kick in our own ideas on this because he was quite surprised that we had completed 4, 5, and 6 with making no changes at all to any of the 5 elected positions.
I'm sorry, Maureen. Excuse me, Maureen. Did you say that Kevin came back and said that some of the stuff is going to be brought up into the big CRC meeting?
He told me
Okay.
that he thinks he has enough votes to return the elections part, the 5 electeds that we have decided we are not recommending to be changed. You know what I'm saying? And that he thought he had enough votes to bring it back to the floor. And I said, I'm not surprised because they're looking for funds for the other position, and they thought this would be the way. So I just want to prepare us for that.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so be it.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, I expect that that's going to happen with a lot of things on this. But this is what we've done, and the number 7 is the only one we haven't completed. So what do you think? Are you ready for us to do a presentation? I mean, we're just going to report on what we've got done, and this is where we are. Go ahead, Tony.
We did the same thing with the elections subcommittee, which is one of the items that did not come up for a vote and did not move forward, but it looks like it's going to be brought up at the CRC. And I told Kevin that we are prepared as a committee, as a subcommittee, to defend either side of it, because we're very well versed in it. I think in this case we can do the same thing. We can say that we already voted that they're not going forward as appointed positions, but we are ready as a subcommittee to discuss the pros and cons of what we discussed. So I think, yeah, we can say we are ready. I mean, I am ready to talk about it, sure.
Me
So-
too. Is everybody else comfortable with that?
I am. I know I was the voice crying in the wilderness, going in the other way from everybody else. And I think everybody gave good, sensible opinions about why they wanted X to happen. And I respect everybody's opinion, and I respect the decision that was made. I even, in one instance, for the sake of unanimity, I changed my vote, as you will recall.
I remember very well.
On the last one.
That's what,
But
Very magnanimous.
that should not, I mean, if this thing gets brought up at the big thing, I'm likely to go back to be at my original position, which is, I think things ought to be elected. But if they ask me about
You mean
how the dis-
appointed?
appointed, right? If
Yeah.
they ask me about how the debate went or anything like that, I think it went really well. And people gave good, solid reasons why they wanted to keep things just the way they are. And there is a whole voice that says, wherever you can, leave things as they are, because that will give the few things that you want to change more of a chance if you're not trying to change the world. I think that's true. So
I think
that
it
is
is.
that's a strong argument for what the committee ended up with, but somebody else will have to offer it.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think we can all go in and speak our minds on that. We all have good, strong opinions on it. And really, I do think there is a limit to what we can ask the county citizens to get behind. It's
Mhm.
too many changes are going to be confusing. Okay, so we're good on that. This is going to be, we might need to put this on share screen, and Tony, maybe you could help me with that on
which
when
one?
we do our thing. Would that be okay?
You mean when? At the
If we
big,
get, yeah, Kevin has put us on for the last 2 weeks and then pulled us off. So I think we might be on this week to present.
Wow.
okay, yeah, I can do that.
Thank you very much. That would be great.
Maureen?
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
I would volunteer to jot out a short proposal about the thing that I was talking about, which is the requirement that the county check on these qualifications and exactly what they would do. And I think I can do it in short order. I can explain what the candidates' duty ought to be regarding that, and then what the receiving clerk's or that person's boss's duty ought to be on checking that. Right now, we don't have any such thing, and I really think it's very important for us to adopt something in that regard.
Well, I'm not sure who does this. It seems to me it wouldn't be the council or the council clerk. It would either be HR or Mike Thomas that would have to do the verification of stuff. I mean, it could be delegated, but
Who receives the whatever the document is that the person has to fill out declaring that they're going to be a candidate? Who receives that?
Elections office.
elections gets that, and that's under the auditor.
Maybe elections could pick the phone up and call that whatever department. That's one idea. David
I
is
don't
waving
think-
his hand. madly.
Hey, I get back. We don't know yet if we can even do this. And Bob, you said last Wednesday, I would listen to the meeting from last Wednesday, and I heard you say that you're completely swamped and might not be able to meet the timeline for your subcommittee. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I think you should focus your efforts elsewhere until we know if we can even do this in the first place. It's right now, to me, it's a non-issue. And I'm sorry I keep beating the bush on this, but I think we're spinning our wheels on something we don't know if we can do or not. So
Well, I don't
Thank
really
you,
think-
thank you for the advice, David.
You're welcome.
I don't
Thank-
really see it as spinning our wheels. I think we have an obligation to
Tony,
explore
I'm
each of
talking,
these
now I'm
tasks.
talking about, well, if you want to
Tony.
get in,
What did I do now?
not Tony, no, Bob, I'm sorry. If you want to get
You're
into a
innocent,
discussion of these things, all respect will probably drop out of here because it's not the time to do it. We don't know if we can do these things. So
Okay.
why talk about them?
Because we have it on our list and it's part of our mandate to talk about these things.
Yeah, but you have to have all the facts first. We don't have the
No.
facts. The
No.
facts,
Many
one of
times,
the
look,
facts is whether we can do it or not.
I did several things on other committees that I'm on, and I had to retract it because I found out we couldn't do it, but we did a
Well,
lot
good,
of
then
work.
you learned,
So
you
don't
learned a
worry.
lesson. You don't do it.
Go
until you
ahead,
know
Bob.
the-
Go ahead, Bob.
I can promise you one thing as an attorney. I can promise you one thing as an attorney. When the legislature says the people down there in the county that have these various offices are going to be required to fulfill these qualifications, they're not going to then say, however, it is illegal for the county to check on these things. That's ridiculous. They're not going to do that. Don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. My only puzzlement is why they haven't already mandated us to do it. We should take it on as responsible
Yes,
public officials to check on these things, for goodness sake.
I agree. I really agree with you, Bob. That's right. So we'll get an opinion, but I think we still have a good list to play with. So yes, go ahead, Tony.
You know, anybody that drinks espresso from a Dumitas is my hero.
Okay,
Bravo.
you're going to love this. Hot chocolate.
What? I
Hot
take it
chocolate.
back. I take it back.
Oh, God. We're in the wrong place. We're in the
Hot
wrong.
chocolate. I thought it was an espresso. I was thinking I'm getting ready to have my own espresso.
If it was espresso, I'd do it like this. I'd have my pinky out like
Yeah,
this.
Thank you.
you're,
Good style, Bob. Showing good style there. Okay, let's just find out. Do we have anybody here from the public that wishes to make a comment? Anybody? Okay. New business.
Hi, hello.
Rhonda.
this
Yeah,
is Rhonda.
yeah. Hi,
Hi.
Rhonda.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. Hi.
Please.
So, yeah, talking to, when you're talking about Kevin Ranker bringing it to the floor, that saying that he has enough votes, one of my biggest concerns is, to combine the treasurer's office with another office, you take away that the checks and balances. And I think the biggest job for the treasurer is to safeguard public funds. And when you're combining, especially with the auditor's office, that office issues all the warrants. And now, if those offices are combined, then that same office would be also redeeming those warrants when they, clear the bank. So currently, if I were to see something that looked fraudulent or any activity that were to happen that maybe council didn't approve or something that didn't look correct, I have the authority to not redeem that warrant. So if the auditor is issuing that warrant and she's, he or she is going to be issuing it and redeeming it, I don't think you have that checks and balance in place. So that would be one of my big concerns. And also to eliminate a position to create another elected position, I don't see where there's, much safeguarding of public funds, or there's not, I don't see where there's any cost savings to the county, because in my position, you would still have to fill my position with another person because I, do staff work as well. And then also, the staffing that I have, it's not like an easy split down the middle and say, okay, this half go to the treasurer or to the auditor and this half go to the assessor. We're all cross-trained and we communicate, all day long in our office about different transactions that are happening. So those are just some of my concerns.
Totally understood.
you.
Rhonda. I'm glad you came in and spoke to us. Thank you. That's
you,
great.
Rhonda.
Thank you.
Can I say something, Maureen?
Okay.
You might point out to Rhonda what we voted on and decided on at the subcommittee level on that very topic. It's public record. Do you want to tell her?
I saw that. Yeah, I was actually there at that meeting.
Yes.
Okay, good.
But my concern is that it's going to the whole group. Yeah, that's going to the whole group, and that's what
Okay.
my concern is.
And that's
Understood.
why we're going to go in and explain what our reasonings were for that and rationale. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, Rhonda. That's actually a very good point, and I think David and Maureen are correct. We already talked about this, but let me just respond to the Kevin Ranker's having enough votes. How does that? That's something that we need to pursue, Maureen. Is that how does that work? Are people just? Does he have 2 votes or 8 votes or 12 votes?
Yeah.
I mean, what does that mean? And if that's the case, that means that there was a meeting that was done away from the public. And I'm going to put that on the record because that to me is a situation that is not kosher, using a foreign word.
Well, he could have obtained that in separate groups. It might not have been in a serial meeting of any sort. So we're not sure.
That's
But
called.
that has been done before when people bring an item back to the full group.
I understand, but that I'm a little bit, anyway. I get
So,
with the RC, let me just finish, David. With the RCV, which is the ranked choice voting that we talked about in the elections, it was brought to the larger group because it was quite well apparently presented at the town hall. So that's a good source of information. But to have to say I have enough votes to bring this to the CRC, that to me is, anyway.
Well, I think I needed everybody to know that. I mean, I'm reporting to
Yeah,
you what
no.
I've heard, and I think it's important.
I'm glad you did. And I think I would say we need to ask that question. How does that, what determines what comes to the CRC?
Yeah.
5 people from the commissioners, or 10 or 4 or what?
Question.
could I comment?
Yes, David.
I think it is definitely something that Kevin has to clarify, and it could be that you suggest to him that one of the first things he does on Wednesday, next Wednesday, is tell us how he sees the process. And I don't know if he can determine what the process is. Maybe it's not beyond one person's scope. But let me tell you, I think everything that has been discussed at the subcommittee level should be on a list of possible things we talk about. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a priority, I assume, is established, and maybe that's how you vote about what issues we really, really want to focus on, because there's so many issues. If every one of them gets, an hour
No.
of discussion, we'll get bogged down completely. There has to be some process, and maybe it's this voting process that determines what the priorities are in terms of what is going to be brought for discussion. And maybe you work down the list until you've covered everything. I don't know,
Okay,
but
okay, hold on for a second. Let me just say something. All of these issues that we're covering will have to be dealt with by the full commission. We all know that. That is exactly why subcommittees are going to make proposals to the full
Yeah.
commission. So for that reason, anything can be revoted on. I mean, that is just the basis of how this works.
okay.
All
I
right, so
think it should be.
Bob, you had your hand up. You go ahead.
Do you know whether Kevin was talking about the merger of departments or the elected versus appointed vote we took? Because those are 2 different things.
I
Right.
think he was talking about how we have concluded in our findings to leave the 5 elected positions elected. He thought there would be a change in that.
So
So
elected
that's
versus
what he's
appointed
talking
is what
about.
he's talking about, not necessarily the merger.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Tony.
Well, again, I want to make sure that we are, here we are, I'm involved in 3 subcommittees, 2 of which, this one and elected, have come up with decisions that are going to go to the larger charter review. I remember Dick Grout saying to the larger group a week or 2 ago, saying that the process should be the top 1 or 2 items that come from the subcommittees, and maybe 1 additional one that could be added to the larger group if in fact there is town hall input or other input. But if somebody is on another committee or is not involved in this particular committee, which is elected versus appointed, and all of a sudden they get upset because we did not move something forward as they wished, how is that going to be? So that means our task. So in other words, why not take the full spreadsheet from the beginning and then bring it up and forget all these subcommittees? It's wasting our time. And this is my rant. I'm sorry, I don't mean to rant, but we're wasting our time if we make a decision, all of a sudden it gets preempted by another source of information.
And that's possible.
Well, it is, yeah, but I mean, with like I said, with the RCV, with the ranked choice voting, the information came from the public, from the town hall, and I get that,
Mhm.
and I agreed with Kevin that it should be brought up. But if somebody doesn't like it that we did not vote to elect or to appoint these positions,
Mhm. I understand. No, I think you make a great point, Tony, and it is odd, but this can happen. This can well happen. That's how it goes. Now, remember, there are a lot of items on a lot of task lists that are just being discarded. They're not even going to be discussed because they're not really relevant to changing the charter. So there'll be a process of elimination that's kind of organic there. Go ahead, David. You have your hand up.
Well, remember, we're making recommendations. We're not, I guess we're making decisions, but only at the subcommittee level. And then we're making recommendations based upon our decisions. So I think it's a given that anybody could bring up anything. And yeah, it's a bit of waste of time. Why are they not giving us more weight when they bring up something that we've already unanimously decided on? But I think we're just going to have to live with it, and it'll probably come out in the discussion. Hey, the subcommittee already discussed all these issues, and let's move on to something that's more
Yeah.
debatable or
I
something.
mean, we had the same kinds of discussions in the last commission. I mean, that are being discussed this time. So it is kind of hard. Go ahead, Bob. You have something to say?
Yeah, two things. I personally think, and this is different than what I've been hearing here, but I personally think that we ought to make a list of all of the things that we were asked to look at initially. And we ought to list them, the ones that we actually dealt with and voted on, the ones that were passed, we ought to list them in priority, number 1, number 2, number 3. Then a space, and 5, 6, 7, and 8 were things that we voted down. And then another space saying, these are things that we didn't even consider because we didn't think them worth considering. I think it's wrong of us to knock all of those things out if it has that effect, but it might not. They might have their own list at the large committee. The second thing that I wanted to say is that this committee and every committee that works hard at this stuff,
Yes.
their decisions ought to be, and I think we ought to unanimously insist on that, no matter what our point of view is, ought to be given due deference. And to me, what that means is, hey, it doesn't start off when you're considering these, say, ranked choice voting. It doesn't, no, let's say when you're considering elected or appointed, and he wants to bring that up, okay? And only one person wanted them to be appointed and everybody else wanted them to stay elected. It shouldn't start off like this. It should start off like this, with a little bit of more weight from what the appointed said. And then in order to get it, so it goes like this, you're going to need a lot of votes, and I think that I would be surprised if Kevin didn't say most of that. If he didn't say these committees worked hard, their conclusions deserve due deference, but they're not the 10 commandments.
Yeah, I got it. I
No,
get you.
no.
Yeah. But we have that now. We have that in the summary. We have this, it's boom. It's easy to read. It's easy to see what we've done and what we haven't done. But remember what Dick said about a month ago. He said by the middle of April, he wanted us to revisit this list and say, which ones do we want to prioritize to the full commission? And that we still have to do that. And as soon as we finish with number 7, which, remember, these are not in a priority list yet, but
Yeah.
when we decide on 7, we're ready to pitch this and also say we're not willing to have you waste your time on 2 and 3 or whatever it will be. So there's a method to the madness. It's just unfolding.
Certainly.
Go ahead, David, and then we'll.
Is
wrap this.
it, you know, Kevin is going to be kind of managing the discussion or the debate or whatever you want to call it. I have a question. Is it under Robert's rules or some other rules? Is it appropriate for the chair to take a position, or is the chair supposed to just be the facilitator of a discussion, keep us on topic, decide, okay, we're going to cut off discussion. Now we're going to have a vote. Is there a motion? What is Kevin's role? Because Kevin, as everybody knows, is a very strong personality. He obviously has views on things that we're talking about. He attends our meetings and speaks up. But can he really, really orchestrate, if you will, the votes? I know Tony has experience with this more than maybe
Why don't we
anybody
let
else
Tony
here. But
answer that?
Tony, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The first meeting that we had as a CRC, we voted to agree to the what's called a minimal Roberts Rule of Order, which means that for a small committee, for a small board, the chair is an active participant. The chair can actually
Okay.
discuss things, not as an arbiter. He or she are going to be an active participant.
Okay, that answers that.
So yes, he is active in it, and he can do whatever he needs to do. The only thing that he cannot do as a chair, or he or she cannot do as a chair, is disagree with Robert's Rule of Order. So,
Okay,
Even if our board were larger and that rule didn't apply and we hadn't voted on it, the chair can set aside the gavel, can call up another person, give that person the gavel, rise out of his or her seat, and go sit in the other person's seat. That person comes up and runs the meeting, and then they can participate. But
Yeah.
they can't in a large group, you know, of 50 board of directors. You know, he could not have this small group exception. But, you know, when we did that, I think everybody thought it was perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
Okay.
he or she, as a chair, like in this case, Maureen, can as a committee lead or chair, can actually end the discussion. So when I suggested the other day not to call for the vote, that is really not a good thing to do in a meeting, because when you call for the vote, you're creating another step in the Roberts Rule. But Maureen, as the chair, can say, you know what, I've heard it all, let's vote.
Or I could say, off with your heads, all of you.
That too, yes. Or meeting canceled.
Lop them off. Yeah.
That's why I'm so polite when I talk to you.
And I'm grateful, believe me. Okay, so we have no public comment, and I think our only business is to set this meeting for another week so that we can get the rest of our team back and we can settle up on these things. Meanwhile, I will seek the opinion on this list, begin it at least, and we'll take it from there, okay? Bob, do you have 2 minutes to stay after the meeting to talk with me?
Yes.
Because I have to go soon, but David has another thing to say.
can we make sure that Dick is at the next meeting? Because if we're gonna do this,
Well,
we wrap it up.
I can't promise that, but
Well, then maybe we have to change the time of the meeting, because I think that's really all we have left, pretty much, isn't it?
well, and Paul has a lot of
Yeah.
input on the assessor.
Well,
part,
on
so-
both of them.
Yeah,
should be
we
there.
want them both here. So
Yeah.
we're going to aim for that. Will you be back in state in Washington next week?
Wednesday, I will be back. Yes, I
Okay,
will be
all right.
next week. I will be here.
Very well.
Hallelujah.
So if there is no further business, shall we adjourn?
Good.
We don't need
I
to,
so move.
I don't think we have to vote for an adjournment, but I thank you all. Great input. And I'll see you on Wednesday. All right. And Bob's going to stay with me.
And
We're
Bob,
going to stop the recording.
change from
What?
hot chocolate to coffee.
Okay.
Okay. Stop recording.